Chapter 1: The Historian's Research. Professor John, a historian, sat in his cluttered office, surrounded by stacks of old documents and books. He had been researching the history of the small village of Fenstanton for years, and had finally uncovered something that piqued his interest. It was a tale of a witch who was said to have lived in the village over 3 centuries ago. John felt an excitement in his bones as he leafed through the old documents, eager to learn more about the witch and her supposed powers. According to the old tales, the witch had been a woman named Agatha, who lived alone on the outskirts of the village. She was said to have had a wicked reputation, and the villagers had whispered that she practiced dark magic. John's interest was further piqued when he found a handwritten account of a young boy who had lived in Fenstanton at the time of the witch. The boy had claimed to have seen Agatha performing rituals in the woods, accompanied by a black cat. The villagers had eventually grown afraid of Agatha and had accused her of causing a series of unexplained misfortunes that had befallen the village. John's research had revealed that Agatha had been tried and executed for her supposed crimes, but he couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to the story. He knew he had to learn more, to uncover the truth behind the legend of the Fenstanton Witch. Determined to delve deeper, John decided to visit the village and see what he could find. He packed his bags, grabbed his trusty notebook, and headed off on the long journey to Fenstanton, excited at the prospect of unraveling the mystery of the witch. As he approached the village, he was struck by the quaint, picturesque surroundings. The village was nestled in the heart of the countryside, surrounded by lush greenery and rolling hills. He could see the village church tower in the distance, and he knew that this was where he would start his investigation. As he stepped into the churchyard, he could feel the weight of history all around him. The gravestones of those who had long since passed dotted the landscape, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and old stone. He made his way inside the church, where he knew there were records of births, deaths, and marriages dating back centuries. The church was a dimly lit, musty space, and John felt a sense of reverence as he walked down the aisle. He made his way to the pulpit, where the old records were kept, and began to search for any mention of the witch. He spent hours poring over the old books, taking notes and recording anything that might be of use. As he worked, John could feel a sense of excitement building within him. He was getting closer to the truth, he could feel it. With every page he turned, every name he read, he was one step closer to uncovering the mystery of the Fenstanton Witch. Chapter 2: The Strange Occurrences. As the historian continued his research on the Fenstanton Witch, strange occurrences began to happen around him. It started with small things, like objects moving on their own and doors creaking open in the dead of night. But soon, the incidents escalated, becoming more alarming and even dangerous. The historian would often wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of shuffling footsteps and eerie whispers that seemed to be coming from just beyond his study door. He would investigate, only to find no one there. The feeling of being watched constantly haunted him. One night, as he sat at his desk, he heard a blood-curdling scream coming from outside. He quickly rose from his chair and ran to the window, but there was no one to be seen. Suddenly, the room went dark, and he felt a cold breeze pass through the room. He could hear whispers and laughter that seemed to be coming from all around him. He felt an icy breath on the back of his neck, and then it was gone. The historian's nerves were shot, and he felt like he was losing his mind. He tried to rationalize the events, but deep down, he knew there was something sinister going on. He started to wonder if he had uncovered something he shouldn't have, something that the Fenstanton Witch didn't want him to find. Despite his fear, the historian continued his research, determined to uncover the truth. But as the strange occurrences continued, he knew he needed help. He reached out to a group of paranormal investigators, hoping they could shed some light on the situation. The investigators arrived at the historian's house and began to conduct their investigation. They set up cameras and recording devices throughout the house and conducted several interviews with the historian to get a better understanding of the events. They also did a walkthrough of the house, looking for any signs of paranormal activity. During their investigation, they captured several strange occurrences on camera, including objects moving on their own and unexplained noises. The investigators even claimed to have captured the image of a woman's figure on one of their cameras, which they believed to be the Fenstanton Witch herself. As the investigation progressed, the historian and the investigators began to piece together the history of the Fenstanton Witch and the events that led up to her execution. They learned that the witch had cursed the town before her execution, and it was believed that her curse was still affecting the area to this day. As the night drew to a close, the investigators packed up their equipment and bid farewell to the historian. They promised to continue their research and keep him updated on their findings. The historian was left alone once again, but this time, he felt a sense of relief knowing that he wasn't alone in his investigation. The events of that night had shaken him to his core, but he knew he had to continue his research. He was determined to uncover the truth behind the Fenstanton Witch and the curse that still haunted the town to this day. Chapter 3: The Old Witch's House. As they approach the Old Witch's house, the group can feel a sense of unease settling over them. The house itself looks like it has been abandoned for years, with cracked and peeling paint on the walls, and overgrown vines creeping up the sides. It's clear that no one has lived here for quite some time. The historian leads the group towards the front door, but as they get closer, they notice that there are strange symbols etched into the wood. The symbols seem to be ancient and arcane, and the group can't help but feel like they are being watched. With a deep breath, the historian pushes open the creaky old door and steps inside. The air is thick with dust and cobwebs, and the only light comes from a few rays of sunlight that filter in through the cracks in the walls. The group can barely see their way through the gloom. As they make their way through the house, strange things begin to happen. Doors creak open and shut on their own, and eerie whispers seem to echo through the empty rooms. The group starts to feel like they are not alone in the house, and they can sense a malevolent presence watching them from the shadows. Eventually, they come to a room at the back of the house that is filled with old books and strange artifacts. In the center of the room, they find a large stone altar, and the historian immediately recognizes it as the one that was used in the witch's rituals. As they start to examine the artifacts, they hear a low growling noise coming from somewhere in the house. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind them, trapping them inside. The group is now in complete darkness, and they can feel the malevolent presence growing stronger by the second. They realize that they are not alone in the house after all, and that they have stumbled into a trap set by the witch's spirit. They frantically search for a way out, but the house seems to be shifting and changing around them, leading them deeper into its twisted labyrinth. They know that they need to find a way to escape before it's too late. Will the group be able to find a way out of the witch's house and escape her vengeful wrath? Or will they become her next victims, doomed to spend eternity trapped within her twisted web? Chapter 4: The Witch's Revenge. After breaking into the witch's house, the historian and his team unwittingly triggered a series of events that would result in a terrifying confrontation with the vengeful spirit. As they explored the dilapidated old house, the team could feel the presence of something sinister lurking in the shadows. They heard strange whispers and creaking noises that seemed to come from all around them. But they pressed on, determined to find any clues that could help them understand the history of the witch and the curse that had plagued the town for centuries. As they moved deeper into the house, the team came across an old journal that belonged to the witch. It was filled with accounts of her suffering and pain at the hands of the townspeople, who had accused her of being a witch and burned her at the stake. But the journal also contained a warning: anyone who dared to enter her house would suffer the same fate as she did. Suddenly, the team heard a loud crashing sound and felt the ground shake beneath their feet. They quickly realized that the witch's curse had been activated, and they were now in grave danger. The team tried to escape the house, but they found that the doors and windows had all been magically sealed shut. The only way out was through the witch herself, who had appeared before them in a terrifying display of supernatural power. The witch demanded that the team leave her house at once, but they refused. They were determined to learn the truth behind her curse and put an end to it once and for all. Enraged by their defiance, the witch unleashed a barrage of dark magic that threatened to consume them all. But the historian and his team refused to back down. They called upon their own knowledge and expertise to fight back against the witch's magic, using ancient symbols and incantations to weaken her power. After a fierce battle, the witch was finally defeated, and her curse was lifted. As they left the house, the team looked back at the once menacing structure, now nothing more than a pile of rubble. They had achieved their goal, but at a great cost. They had seen things that would haunt them for the rest of their lives, and they had come face to face with a power that they could scarcely comprehend. But they had also learned an important lesson, that even in the darkest of places, there is always hope for redemption and renewal. Chapter 5: The Confrontation. As the historian and his friends returned to the witch's house, they could sense an eerie aura surrounding the place. It was as if the very air itself was heavy with a sense of foreboding. They knew that they were walking into a trap, but they had no choice. They had to confront the witch and put an end to her vengeful spirit once and for all. As they entered the house, they could hear strange noises coming from all around them. It was as if the very walls were alive with the sound of creaking wood and whispering voices. The historian's heart was pounding in his chest, but he tried to keep his composure. Suddenly, they heard a loud cackling laugh coming from the other end of the room. The witch had arrived, and she was not happy to see them. She had summoned all her powers to create an army of undead soldiers to protect her and fight against them. The historian and his friends were ready for a fight, and they charged towards the witch. They swung their swords and shields with all their might, but the witch's magic was too strong for them to handle. She summoned a barrage of lightning bolts, and the historian's friends fell one by one. The historian, left alone, bravely charged towards the witch with his sword raised high. As he swung his sword towards the witch, she disappeared and reappeared behind him. The historian, caught off guard, turned around and faced the witch with a determined look on his face. The witch cast a spell, and the historian was thrown back with tremendous force. As he lay on the ground, the witch approached him with a wicked smile on her face. The historian knew that he was facing certain death, but he refused to give up. With all his might, he pushed himself up and launched an attack on the witch. He swung his sword with all his strength, and the blade pierced the witch's chest. The witch let out a blood-curdling scream, and she fell to the ground, defeated. The historian looked around, and he saw that all the undead soldiers had vanished. The witch's hold on the town had been broken, and the people were free once again. The historian breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that the town was safe once again. He gathered his friends, and they left the witch's house, never to return again. The people of the town celebrated their victory and honored the historian and his friends for their bravery. The historian knew that the witch's story would be told for generations to come, but he also knew that it was a story that needed to be told. The people needed to remember the horrors of the past to appreciate the peace of the present. The historian and his friends left the town, satisfied that they had done their part to make the world a better place. Chapter 6: The Aftermath. After the intense confrontation with the witch and the subsequent destruction of her cursed house, the village of Fenstanton is in a state of shock. The villagers cannot believe what has just happened and how their peaceful little village has been turned upside down by the events of the past few days. The historian and his team, along with the local authorities, worked tirelessly to investigate the witch's house and uncover the secrets it held. They discovered that the witch had been a powerful practitioner of black magic, and her evil influence had spread throughout the village for centuries. The team also finds evidence of human sacrifices and other heinous acts committed in the house. The villagers are both relieved and horrified by these revelations. They had always known that there was something strange about the old witch and her house, but they never imagined the extent of the evil that had been brewing inside it. The historian and his team work to cleanse the village of the witch's influence and help the villagers come to terms with what has happened. The team organizes a series of workshops and counseling sessions for the villagers, allowing them to express their emotions and begin the process of healing. As time passes, the village begins to return to its old ways. The villagers rebuild their homes, and life goes on. However, the memory of the witch and her house still haunts them, and they remain wary of any strange occurrences in their midst. The historian, on the other hand, is not content with just putting the past behind him. He continues his research into the history of Fenstanton and its dark past, determined to uncover any other secrets that may be lurking beneath the surface. He hopes that by doing so, he can prevent such a tragedy from happening again. In the end, the historian finds closure and a sense of fulfillment in his work. He knows that the witch's curse has been lifted, and the villagers can live their lives without fear. However, he also realizes that the events of the past few days have changed him forever. He has seen things that he never thought possible and witnessed the true power of evil. From now on, he will approach his work with a newfound sense of respect for the past and the dangers that it may hold.